Okay, so Nana, you have been following Weight Loss Apocalypse since pretty close to when it was published, which was in November of 2011. So I think the first time I got a message from you was like January of 2012. Does that sound right?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Hello?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Now I can. I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
I can totally hear you. Okay, so
Okay.
did you hear what I just said?
I heard what you... No, repeat that again.
I said, you started, first time I heard from you on Facebook, you'd sent me a message on Facebook, was like January of 2012. Weight Loss Apocalypse was published in November of 2011. So we've been talking for a good 2 years, 2.5 years.
Yep.
And not only that, but you're an admin on one of the Weight Loss Apocalypse private groups. And you've attempted the protocol with the method. And you've done the protocol a bazillion times.
Yes.
And it was hard to do the method. Don't you agree? It was really hard to apply the mind-body method to the protocol.
It was. I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
No matter how hard, and I really tried.
Well, yeah, your effort wasn't lacking, right? It's not like and you didn't really, cheat on your protocols or anything, but you never really had guidance with me. You never really had the guidance. You just kind of read Weight Loss Apocalypse. You've watched all the videos that I post on YouTube, and you would converse with me on Facebook when you were struggling. And how many times did I say to you, "Oh, Nana, you're gonna have to gain more weight. You're gonna have to struggle. You're gonna have to figure this out."
And I didn't understand that.
Yeah, and you were just like, "What are you talking about, you friggin' bitch?" And then you reached out again, right? You reached out again in like April. Was it April?
Yeah, I think it was March, April.
When's your birthday?
My birthday's in May.
In May.
It was, I think I reached out to you in April after, because I went on my cruise in March, and I came back from there, and I think that's when I sort of had enough.
Yeah, and you were just like, "Oh, I don't know what to do. I'm binging my brains out like all the time. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to stop." Right? And I was like,
exactly.
And I finally was just like, either talk to the hand or just invest in sessions with me if you really want to get this shit done. Yeah. You've never had skin in the game. Anytime I've given you any counseling, it's been free. So I'm like, pay me and let's do it. And you were like, all right.
Yeah.
And so we had our first consult in late April. It was before.
It was the day before my birthday, so that was May 23rd.
Okay, so May 23rd. And it was intense. It wasn't like I was screaming or yelling at you. It was just, I was trying to explain to you, like, here's the situation. Here's the system that you've been implementing. And I said, and here's what you've gotten, right? And then I said, and I'm going to give you an alternative. Can you imagine what your life would be like with this alternative? And tell me how that was for you.
It was, first of all, it was like turning on a light switch and just lifting all the burden off my shoulders, and I just felt free. Like, I felt like, finally.
It was instant, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
It was almost as if when I was describing it to you, it was as if it was pulling you through some crazy vortex, right? I don't know if it was... It just opens your mind to go, wow, like that's accessible just in my thoughts. That freedom from the obsession, freedom from all that shame and guilt, freedom from this crazy. And the main switch is leaving the idea, right, that you have to have this body image to live. Right? Basically, the image of perfection physically was the foundation of everything you've been doing.
I did, yes.
And what you were doing, right, to get to there was insane, right? There was this psychological ramification to everything that you did, right? And you pretty much did everything.
Yeah.
You even went and saw an allergist and did gut work and removed food.
Yes. Yep.
I know. And now tell me, so once we made that switch, has it been difficult for you to stay aware of what you were doing, the belief system you were obsessed with, and the alternative, which is basically open-ended? Agreed?
Yeah, it's been very easy to see how I used to be like, and every day my eyes are open like, I can't believe this is what I believed. Like, I think a month ago, I went back and read all of our messages. It was like 300 pages, and I'm like, oh my God. I'm like hitting my head on the wall, like, Nana, like, you were saying the same things to me, and it didn't resonate with me at all. At all. I was so heavily entrenched in the belief that I couldn't understand. I just couldn't get it.
Well, and I was there with you, dude. When I was sick, it was like there's no other alternative. Either you're skinny or you're dead. And that's what it came down to, right? Like, I can't live life without this perfection of the body. I mean, what's life about if you don't have a thin body? Yeah. When you're hearing this, doesn't it sound a little crazy?
It does, but that's exactly what I believed.
And that's what I believe too.
I couldn't see it any other way.
Now, do you see that would you say that you were clinically diagnosably bulimic or a binge eater?
Yes.
Because you would have had to at least binge and puked at least twice a week, or binged and exercise purged twice a week. That's a bulimic. Binge eater is different. The euphoria of the binge. So maybe you're more of a binge eater because you didn't really purge with exercise. Well, that's not true.
No, I didn't purge with exercise. I didn't puke the food, but I would binge and then I would diet.
Yeah, that is a binge eater. That's binge eater. But binge eaters don't tend to have a resolution to those binges immediately. So they'll binge without a resolution. Although I haven't met a binge eater yet that doesn't intend to diet at some point in the future. Yes. And for you, it was either restriction with food, right? Not only restricting quantity, but restrictive food types. And you also restricted through exercise obsessively.
It would be both at the same time.
Yeah, because you have to get rid of, right? This is the puking. You've got to get rid of all of that fat that you had just accumulated, right? Would you say that you always had a mental note of what was acceptable in a gain? Like you would say, I'm okay gaining 30 pounds for now.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, like as you're going through that binging, you'd be like...
I was aware of what I was doing.
Yeah, well, everybody is. It's actually very logical. It's actually a very logical, decisive way of manipulating food and dieting, but it's based on a very irrational, illogical belief system. The belief system is that you are a better person, you are a more worthy person, you are more acceptable, you will be more loved, you will be put on a pedestal, you will be... If you are thin, consider all of the emotion that you attach and that culture attaches to that perfect body image. And the other thing is how much advertising do you hear, or propaganda do you hear, where there's images of beauty and then there's this diet tag that says we can do this. They make it seem realistic. Don't you agree?
Yep, they do.
It's realistic. The other thing that we see is food, fear-based food propaganda, which is like, if you eat this food makes you fat. There's no deciphering of like quantities. It's just a blanket statement of this food makes you fat. So it's this fear that creates this belief that if I eat the food, smell the food, touch the food, think about the food, it makes you fat. So there's this, the media really influences not only through the manipulation of creating the ideal picture, but they manipulate you because they make you seem like it's totally realistic. Oh my God, I'm sorry. Potato. Go ahead. And if you're not if you're struggling to feel valuable as a person, don't you see how that would be easy for someone to...
Easy to be sucked in.
Totally. You are like prey. You're easy prey if you're feeling disconnected and wanting to find some sense of community. So basically what we did the very first time we talked is discussed basically the goal, and it's like rewards. Like that goal and all of the illusion of what it provided. First of all, you'd lost weight before. You had the perfect body before. It never provided those emotions.
No.
And it was never good enough. So it was like you attained the goal, you reached the belief system, and it never truly gave you this. No, it's almost like diminished as you reached it. It was like not good enough. Now we got to keep on going.
I have to go more. Exactly.
Because
the moving goal.
Yeah. This is actually very predictable. So then you end up, the problem is that you have the standard and the means to get there. I want your opinion. Do you think there's truly any diet or food propaganda or exercise routine or regimen that is truly capable of taking someone and making their body ideal without psychological consequences?
I don't think so.
I would agree. And that's the problem. I think they're unintended. I don't think people understand that there is a consequence that is so detrimental, right? But who would think that by saying we're going to eliminate all carbohydrates, that would have psychological ramifications?
Yeah.
No one really understands that. But yet they think, based on the physical body, if we remove all these starches and carbs, we're going to get the image.
Yeah.
Right? And what you as a consumer had done and said, okay, the benefits versus the risks, right? Oh, my dog is just going nuts right now. Can you hear him?
Yeah.
My husband's probably outside and he's wanting out. But anyways, so the benefit would be, okay, there's an image of beauty and idealism. And what that's going to provide me socially and culturally is all those emotions, those positive emotions, right? Community, security. I'm going to be feeling adequacy and I'm going to be accepted, and I'm going to be put on a pedestal, and people are going to look at me and go, look at you, you're amazing, right?
Yep.
And the cost, however, so the diet says, we can do this for you, and the cost is you're going to remove food. Like and we're going to micromanage, we're going to study it, and there's all this work involved, right? So there's a cost to it. The cost, unfortunately, has this unintended consequence. Right? It's the psychological perceptions and physiological reality of starvation. And so what do you think that made you sensitive to?
Probably more weight gain.
Binging.
Because I would binge.
Of course. It's that the binge deprivation state of mind.
Binge,
physically and biologically you're prone to binging. And then because this... It's not like you were trying to attain a goal that was just intrinsically personal. You were trying to attain a social standard. That's the big difference. It's not only just a social standard, but it's obviously providing you something emotionally as an individual, right? But because it's a cultural standard, and it's and you're using a social means through dieting, right? Because you binged. Where's the failure?
Me.
You got it, because it's you against society, honey. It's you against that entire diet. So you're pointing the arrow at yourself, and it's completely unconscious, right? Do you remember when you would go through binges, how it kind of felt unconscious? Mm-hmm. But it's not because you weren't aware. You're completely aware. And not only that, the whole thing is rational. You're rationalizing why you've deserved it, why you've earned it, how you're going to fix the damages. This whole thing has this logical conversation going on, but it's founded on all of this irrational feelings. And the irrational feelings come from feeling inadequate because you don't have the social or cultural standard. So all we had to do, right? All I had to do in that first session was to remove that. And what happened? Have you binged since that meeting?
Nope.
It's
not once.
I know. I have worked with so many people, sugar addicts who have gone to Overeaters Anonymous, alcoholics who binge on food now. I mean, the only thing you need to truly, truly do to start this whole process is get rid of your belief and your following of that cultural belief system. So now that you're out of it, can you believe how many people are in it?
It seems like everybody.
They subscribe to it. And not only that, but can you see, because your parents subscribed to it so closely and because they talked about it a lot, that you became vulnerable to it?
Yeah.
Do you think you would have had as much intensity in your eating disorder if your parents hadn't subscribed to it as intensely or talked about it or made it important?
Probably not. No. Mm-mm. I don't think so.
No. And they may have other. Have you thought yet that there might be something else you might be following that might be causing similar dissatisfaction with yourself in your life?
I haven't thought about it, actually.
One of the main, if we look at just society, like the Canadian American culture, put them all in a pot. Mm-hmm. What do you think are the main cultural, there's what do you call them?
Religion.
Objectives.
Financial.
Financial is huge,
education.
Don't you agree? And financial is buying power, don't you agree? That's consumer driven, the ability to buy and consume goods. Mm-hmm. Religion is basically trying to be seen as worthy through religious roles, right? Mm-hmm. Money, religion, body image.
Yep.
Politics. Mm-hmm. Education can be one for some people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that you are to prove your value to society, to culture, right? There's these cultural standards or ideals. You have to attain them to prove that you are a worthy part of society.
Right. And
then there's, through consumerism, provided means to attain them, right? This is capitalism gone amok. And so we pay to try to reach these ideals to prove ourselves worthy. And most of them have points of diminishing return psychologically in the means to attain it. And usually, right, when you attain that goal, is it really fulfilling?
No, because it wasn't for you.
No, it's for society, right?
Yeah. That's why you're never happy.
Exactly. Exactly. So it is now almost the end of August. So we've done almost all of, we'll say all of June, all of July. Mm-hmm. So most of the work we did in June was in June.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And would you say that the most important connection you made was with our first session?
I think so.
And then after that, we just kind of explored eating to hunger and how it worked now. Mm-hmm. The vulnerability to binging now that you don't have the pressure to meet that cultural standard. Now that you no longer follow that idealism as your personal feelings of value, right? Mm-hmm. Your issues with food are gone.
Totally.
You can eat anything. Now, when I say that, people think I'm crazy. And I'm not. It's not crazy, actually. And we talked about it too. Like, we want to eventually, when there's no shame and guilt with your food and there's none of this, strict rules around food, the ability to feel the body's response, right?
Right, yeah.
And overall, how do you feel like you did?
I feel like I did very good. I was able to be out of my normal routine, like with vacations and everything, and family gatherings, and I followed my hunger. And
with trigger foods and all sorts of stuff. And the main thing too was that you were to completely eliminate the self judgment, right? Because if you're never going to hold yourself to that standard anymore, and you're no longer going to use that as a platform to be worthy, all of a sudden it doesn't make sense then to subscribe to a diet. Doesn't make sense to even monitor your weight, right? And it doesn't make sense even if you had lost weight during the practice. Don't you agree that it doesn't make sense then to feel better because of that?
No.
Agreed.
What made me feel better was all the mind games and, the guilt. And I remember sometimes I would sweat when I would eat something that was deemed to me as bad, And yeah, I was comfortable around food wherever I went. Like if I had that function at work or if I was at my mom's house, and I felt comfortable. I didn't feel heavy and bloated and sick after I ate.
No matter what it was that you ate.
No matter what it was.
Yeah, don't you agree too don't you agree too that physical, that you had to be very aware of your body while you were eating? To do that, right?
Yes.
And didn't you notice that it changed depending on what you ate? That certain things you could eat more of without having that, and stopping. And then some things you had to really stop early. Like, whoa, I got to stop. Otherwise, I'm going to feel sick or feel bloated. So you had to be conscious about it and not attach that demonizing emotion to it. Did you ever... at any point during this practice, because we could say you've been practicing for over 2 months now.
Yeah.
Did it ever get hard to where you started to have any body loathing? Like, I wish I could just get rid of this fat. I wish I could just get rid of it.
Not at all.
Yeah. Well,
not once.
Tell me why.
And it's like, it's almost crazy hearing myself say that because... I remember a year ago this time I weighed less and I was so uncomfortable with my skin. Like I was so desperate and I'm no longer desperate to lose weight. I'm more comfortable in my skin at a heavier weight than I was at a lighter weight. Totally.
Yeah, that's pretty important in terms of allowing yourself to develop emotionally too. Emotionally in terms of, all the stuff you ended up using food for. Was there any residual use of food that was only there because of the diet mentality?
Well, one big aha moment I had was when I went on vacation to a cottage and I didn't overeat it, but I ate a lot of sugar over a course of 2 days, and then when I came back home, I was craving that same sugar, and I couldn't understand why. And I thought, I must be addicted to sugar. It must be because I have sugar that is addicted. Until we spoke, and I realized how I was attaching that sugar to a feeling of freedom.
Yeah, well, and the emotion of that freedom you had as a kid. So it wasn't the sugar that It
wasn't the food.
No, it was the emotion that was associated to that food. So it was a condition. We could say it was real. I mean, the cravings were real, but was it the sugar or was it the emotion attached to that sugar? So
I was craving the emotion, not the food.
Yeah. So when we look back at it, it's like, well, the problem isn't necessarily the sugar. It was when you started it, when you went into it seeking those emotions. Like you have to eat it to have that feeling. It's not necessarily true, because chances are you had that feeling just when you saw the food. Like you were feeling it just looking at the food or looking at that candy at the candy store, right?
Exactly.
That should have been so gratifying alone. I would have just sat there taking pictures of it. That's not a big deal. Yeah. But to feel like I have to taste it to then fully experience it. And the funny thing is, when you probably tasted it, it didn't do anything.
No.
It was the moment you walked in, the candy store is there, and you're like, oh my gosh, look at this candy I haven't seen since I was a child, and I remember this, and oh my God, that had to have been like, you were high in that candy store. You hadn't even had the candy.
Yep.
Isn't that funny? So then, during that vacation, remember when I said to you, the part of the process of practice is to only eat what the mouth it's craving, right? So, were you necessarily listening to the mouth?
No.
It was all mind.
Yep.
Mental. And there's nothing bad about that. You just have to be conscious. So then, you go through the weekend repetitively eating candy to hunger, functionally, right? And wonder why you're still having this desire and need. So, man, that's a big lesson.
Yeah, it was.
So now we're getting ready to do a round of the protocol, right? And this is like your 21st round of the protocol. 20 something. And it's like, why, right? We're talking about this, relief from having to meet the model, right? That you have to be perfect. And now we're going to go on this protocol. At this point, this is not a diet. Agreed?
I agree 100%.
This has absolutely nothing to do with the way you look.
No.
Society standards.
No.
Your weight. Does it?
No, it doesn't.
Agreed. This is, to me, where the power of this protocol is now real. Because you're not going to get in the way. Your, mental feelings of deprivation aren't going to get in the way. Your demands for weight loss aren't going to get in the way. Yeah. You are now an observer. And we talked about this being more as if you have a form of fat cancer that you caused, right? From the repeated dieting and binging and then dieting, from living in that cult mentality. Right. And now it is, you've been given over 2 months to enjoy food for the first time since childhood. Like, really.
Yeah.
Because you've never really done it this way with that, except for when we started working together. You really didn't know how that worked. So now that you've done it for 2 months, do you feel gratified?
I do, definitely.
Yeah. Isn't it exciting to know that you can go back to that?
Yeah.
And there's nothing different. Nothing's going to change when this round is over. Absolutely nothing. No. Because you've been eating to the body's rhythm, so whatever that is, you're going to do it. Whether it's more or less, you're still going to accommodate to it. So nothing's changing. So this is a form of fat chemotherapy. I described it as if all of this fat is a form of cancer. It's grown inside the intestines. You have fat now where it's not supposed to be. You have fat cells that are multiplying. They're sensitive to multiplying. And not only is it taking up space inside the body, but the major issues that this fat is creating for you. You need to make a decision, Potato. I'm sorry. Let me that again. Okay. So basically, you've got this fat cancer, and the biggest detriment is the fact that each cell of fat, whether it's cancerous or not, stimulates all of these hormones. So all of these hormones that you have are affecting your other organs, and over time, it just shortens the life of your organs and your body, the body you're in. So you do need a form of fat cancer chemotherapy. And the protocol, what's so beautiful about this protocol is it allows your body fat to be utilized at a much faster, higher rate than you could otherwise. And I go over that in Weight Loss Apocalypse, so we're not going to talk about that. And so it actually not only gets rid of the fat, but the hormonal damages that were caused to the other organs. So this is the coolest part. So not only are you getting rid of fat, but it allows the other organs to then heal. So this is this is like chemotherapy for your endocrine system, the whole system, not just fat. It's like a major metabolic therapy. And the only way we really know it works is not during the protocol. So how much fat you lose during the protocol has absolutely nothing to do with the success of this or how we know it worked. We will know it worked when it's over and you're back to reality. So yeah, when you're back to eating reality's foods, that's when we know, are you still sensitive? And so it doesn't even matter how much you lose, because if your brain, right, your set point adjusted, but not quite as much as you lost on the protocol, you're going to naturally gain it back whether you want it or not.
Right.
But it should be favorable. So if you, let's, for example, say you've lost 30 pounds in a 40 to 60 day period on the very low calorie protocol, but during the transition and back into reality, you gained about 10 pounds. Eating to hunger, eating to the mouth, doing exactly what you did, the brain may not have adjusted 30 pounds. It adjusted 20. That's still favorable.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
So as you're going through this protocol, it's super important you don't really care about the number because it may not be permanent.
Right.
The other thing is if you attach emotionally to that number, you're setting you just bought right back into the cult, right? You just bought back into the system.
Yeah.
So if I'm feeling so much better, I'm so much more worthy, look at me, people are noticing, oh my gosh, I'm changing pant sizes. What you're doing is you're subscribing to that social order, right? And then all of a sudden you have to keep it. And then what do you got to do?
Diet.
You got it. Which the dieting
will cause me to binge.
Correct. Those are the unintended consequences that people don't really get. It's like dieting has unintended consequences. The diet industry doesn't know about it. They have no freaking clue. They're not smart enough. But there are psychological and physiological consequences to removing food for the context of social order.
Right.
So are you excited to start?
Yes, I am. I'm actually looking forward to it.
You know, the coolest part is when you're done. That's the big test. Because you've never had rounds where you cheated a ton. You haven't been a big cheater. Your issues are as soon as the protocol's over. It's like crazy shit, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So this is the big test because we're about to say, okay, we're going to provide you this therapy. Your body's going to get a chance to heal. You've had 2 months to enjoy food, to have all this pleasure, right? And then we're going to... Can you give the body a chance now?
Yes, I can. Yeah. Definitely.
Some of the side effects, some of the consequences you're going to have is withdrawal. We've been eating to pleasure for over 2 months. That was a huge part of the practice. The goal was to create as much pleasure as possible every time you ate, right?
Right.
So all of a sudden, that's the same goal, by the way, on the protocol. Do you understand that? Within the selection of foods, the goal is to make as much pleasure as you can. Use pretty plates, use fizzy water, you know. Your goal is to...
And that's something I've never done before. I used to eat the same plain food every single day.
Doesn't that sound like a diet?
Yes, it does.
You're just trying to get through it.
I won't be doing that this time.
No. Your goal is to look up recipes. You can have lobster and you can have tons of stuff. And you are not to have a... my goal is to lose as much fat as possible. No. That's not your goal. Why are you setting goals for your body?
Yeah.
You know, in order for you to set goals for your body, you gotta have a pretty huge ego. Don't you agree? Because that's a sign that you think you know what the body should be accomplishing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, how many people think that? Like, wow, you must know a lot about the human body to tell us what we should be losing.
Yeah.
wait, no one really knows. No one really knows. You know, when we did a bunch of metabolic testing and we could make predictions, but ultimately no one really knows what's going on in the brain. So who knows where your set point's going to end up landing? You know, but who cares about that if you don't really adjust your mind and adjust this way of thinking? None of it's going to work out in the long run.
Agreed.
How does this feel to you, this next round? How's it feel?
It feels good.
Excited. Do you feel like it's more of an experiment than anything?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so because it's going to be even though I've never cheated on my previous rounds, it was always about, you know, losing weight and fitting into all my old clothes. And even though I've attempted a few rounds trying to use the method by saying I'm not going to weigh myself, but that was still what my goal was to lose weight and be smaller. So I would still look at myself in the mirror and, you know, so this time I'll be like, none of that's obviously going to be going on. So it's going to be good. I think it's going to be a nice break for my body.
I think so too. I think, and then when it's over, I think that's when we're going to want to have our last sessions, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Because I feel like if there's any vulnerability, it will be then. It'll be then. If you attach to the losses in any way at all.
Yeah.
You know, to where you just, I don't want to lose this. My suggestion for you is to assume you're not going to lose anything, or anything you lose is going to come right back.
Come back right back.
Yeah. That viewpoint, that view keeps your psychological ramifications of the dieting, those unintended consequences, out of the picture. Because you're not getting anything emotional out of this therapy. It's a physical therapy, not an emotional therapy.
Right.
Right? The emotional therapy can occur by detaching, right? By saying, give me what society wants me to have, and I'm not going to care. So that's kind of, if we are going to use it as an emotional therapy, that's what we're doing. We're going to give you what society wants you to have. What they're going to say makes you a better person. We're going to give you what makes you more valuable. We're going to give you what makes you accomplished. What makes people proud of you. You must be so much happier now, right? We're going to give you inches and pounds.
Yeah.
And what do you think the goal is? For you to say, I don't care. That doesn't make me any different. My value is intrinsic. It's not extrinsic. All this societal standards and bullshit isn't true. Unless you subscribe to it.
Right. Exactly.
Right? Because we can live in it. We can subscribe in it kind of ritually. But to be honest with you, the problem is when you attach the emotional valuation of yourself to it. So hopefully that's gone. Because if it's not, it will come back on this protocol. Because that's what happens. I'm really excited. So
yeah, I think it's gone.
Well, you know, you've had a lot of opportunity for it to come back.
Yep.
You know, it's kind of like when you went to that one summit, that exercise fitness thing, and they were like, here's the new, like, cleanse, right?
What was it? Three-day refresh, yeah.
The cleanse. Here's the cleanse we're going to sell you. You can buy it right now. This is good. And the first instinct is, this is it. This is what's going to be, this is what gets me to that social ideal. This cultural, like, I could have it if I just buy this one thing. And do you remember that feeling?
Yep.
Like, don't touch it, because there are unintended psychological ramifications that have literally taken over your life for a good 40 years. 30, well, at least 30.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to stop videotaping.
Okay.
Thanks for sharing this.
No problem.